Welcome. I am Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed psychologist, and here I cover the psychological aspects of legal and entertainment news. Today, Shanda Vander Ark is being sentenced right now, and I started watching her two older children. They ended up giving some victim impact statements. They are extremely powerful, all the warnings, because they're going to have a lot to say, and I really really want to talk about this. So the hearing starts out with Shonda being a little, so they're going through the sentencing document, and they're making edits to things. And so in the sentencing document, it said that she had a bachelor's. Well, she has a like she has her law degree. It said that the law degree took her 4 years. Well, it took her 3 years. And so they go back and forth, making sure that this document is accurate. She's right there with her lawyer when they're making those things. Something comes out about her mental health as well. I don't want to make this about her, because this is about remembering Timothy. Her s- it's this is about remembering Timothy. And so yes. Yes. So I am going to just play a second of this because you just kind of see some of her demeanor, and I think it'll give you a good feeling for some of the statements that her children make a little bit later. So,
On the,
yes.
let's see, one, two, third paragraph down, there's a request for restitution for $5,000 to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. We object to that request. We ask that the court disallow that request at this juncture. We haven't received any information to justify it. And we'd ask for um, a hearing if the court plans to proceed on that.
Mr. Roberts?
Your Honor, that request is made by the Department of Health and Human Services as compensation back to the Crime Victims' Rights Compensation Act. That fund did pay out some funeral expenses as a result of this, and the fund is entitled to seek compensation from the defendant in those cases. I think it would end up being joint and severally liable with Paul Ferguson as well if we get to that juncture with Paul Ferguson. But we do believe it is an appropriate award, and there is documentation from the state to indicate that that award was paid out. So we would request that.
And so they're going to go on to say that they're going to make sure that she gets a copy of that documentation. Some There we go. And so I am going to fast forward because they're going to go back and forth a lot over every little thing in this document, including she wanted her internship added as a part of her employment. And okay. All right, so let's get to Millie, her daughter, and I think that's the daughter that she mentioned in her testimony that's in college. She spoke very lovingly about her daughter. All of her children are going to refer to her by her first name. All of the surviving children, Paul, each and every person that gives a statement today. I stopped. So after Millie comes a brother, Nolan. Um, I had too many thoughts. I had to go live. We definitely had to watch this together. So let's go ahead and play this part now. This is Millie.
Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Um, Can you please state your name for the record?
Millie Joan Ferguson.
Go ahead, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you. I'm Millie. I'm Timothy's youngest older sister. I'm 2 years older than him. One of my earliest memories I have was being taken away from my parents by CPS. My two older brothers rode in a car ahead of us, and me and Timothy rode together in the second car. And in every picture we have as a family, Timothy was always right by my side. We were the two youngest, the two smallest. We were the two that sat in the middle in the backseat car rides with the too small car. The last two to get hand-me-downs, the two that never had to worry about not getting homework help from an older sibling. He was always 2 years behind me, so every time I got to the next level in school, that's how many years I had to wait for him to follow along. When I was in 8th grade, he was in 6th, and there was a student in my science class that started talking about him, trying to start rumors. I stood up right as class was starting, as people were quieting down, and I shouted at him to never talk about my little brother. People could say whatever they wanted about me. I didn't care, but not about him, and never about him, because I was his big sister. It was my job to protect him. I like to say I don't regret things in my life, that every mistake I've made has made me who I am today. But when Timothy died, I couldn't stop regretting. I regret not hugging him more and teasing him so much instead of telling him that I loved him every once in a while. I regret not putting aside my differences with Shanda and Paul just to check in on him. I regret not dancing with him the last time I saw him at our brother's wedding. These are the things that I can't remedy now. There's no fixing what's been done. No way to redo it all over again. And that's my regret, that I couldn't protect him when he needed me most.
I'm giving us a little break because her statement is so powerful and it continues to get even more powerful. And the things that she's saying. So I have worked with survivors, so victims of violent crime, their families, and there's so much regret, survivor's guilt. There's so much that the individual feels, and she does talk about doing her own therapy and being on her own journey, and this type of loss is not a typical loss, and so that's why I have a video, life after loss, especially a traumatic loss, because if I lose a family member to by natural causes, it's still hard. It still hurts. It's different when it was your mother and your brother that that do this. And so um let's keep going. Make sure to breathe, make sure to take care of yourself, drink some water. If this gets to be too much, step away. I totally understand.
Timothy was so smart. He could take anything apart with any tools or none at all. He had trouble focusing, but when he did, he was just as smart as the rest of his class. He made people angry, yes, but then he would look at you with those big baby blue eyes and you could never stay mad at him. It took me 6 months of therapy after he died to even properly feel the emotions of his death. And I'm still in therapy today. I've been trying so hard since he passed away just to try to let people know of him, let people know that he was loved, that there are people out there grieving for him. I'm here today for him because I was asked to speak for him, because I was given a victim impact statement for him instead of a witness one, because the victim of this crime can't speak for himself.
Wow. I was given a victim impact form instead of a witness form. Like that. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And sometimes in therapy, individuals will work with their therapist on their victim impact statement. I've also done that with a few individuals as well, because creating that safe space in therapy, especially them getting to say it to the therapist or saying it to another loved one before they get up and share it in court. This was another reason why I wanted to amplify her voice, and because this amplifies Timothy's voice. Um, let's keep going.
I knew him his whole life. I held him the day he was born, and I continued to try to hold his hand as long as he was by my side until he wasn't. I want the woman who killed my little brother to face the highest punishment possible. I want her detained for the rest of her life so she can't hurt anyone else. And I want the world to know that Timothy was wanted, if not by her, then by me. He was loved by me. Thank you.
So powerful. So powerful.
Nolan Ferguson will be next, Judge.
And Paul is not in the courtroom. And that's appropriate. I think that's appropriate for Paul to not be there.
I go by Nolan. My full name is Eric Nolan Ferguson Jr.
Go ahead, Mr. Ferguson.
I am Timothy's oldest brother, and unfortunately the oldest child of Shanda Vander Ark. I live with my wife 900 miles from here, and in July of 2022, I was working 60-hour work weeks, trying to build a career when I received a phone call that I never thought I would get. My baby brother Timothy was gone. For 2 days, I reeled with no explanation until I was informed that our own mother was in jail for his murder. Somehow, making an entirely unexpected and deeply awful situation worse. I thought that things were different than when I was younger. I thought my mother had changed for the better. Not one day has been easier since then. I've had to leave.
Okay. So, because a lot of people talk about the father, and I honestly think the family thought that she had changed. Timothy was loved. And I think if anyone had known about what was happening or what was going on, I think there are a lot of family that would have rushed in and made sure that Timothy was safe. And so I thought that was powerful because I do think the family thought that she was different. You know, she's studying to be a lawyer. Do you know what I mean? Like you would I don't think they thought that the person she was when they were little and they were removed from her care, I think they thought that she had changed. And I don't fault them for that. Does that make like I hope people can understand that people do have the capacity to change just because somebody did, but like and it sounds like things were okay until her husband's stroke, and people have thoughts about that, but, like, it seemed like everything was okay, and then something switched, and it just seems like she took everything out on Timothy. I've also said, I don't think there was any way for him to escape her wrath because I don't think he could do anything right. Like, I think she would have found something wrong with everything, and it wasn't his fault. It was not his fault, and it breaks my heart that he might have thought it was. Um, okay, let's keep going.
To leave my career behind. My wife has to watch helplessly as I struggle, day in and day out, wondering how none of us knew what was going on, wondering if I told Tim I loved him enough times for him to remember up until the very end. I have to wake up every day and pretend that I am who I was before Timothy died. I have to pretend to be Nolan so that my friends and coworkers and family won't worry about me more than they already do. I'm surrounded by people who love me and care about me, but not a single person besides my sisters who understand how hard it is. Timothy wasn't surrounded by people who loved him when he died. And if I had known that, nothing could have stopped me from rescuing him and holding him in my arms and telling him I love him, that his big brothers got him, just like I did the day he was born. But because of Shanda Vander Ark's actions, I instead got to cradle the bag of his ashes in my arms, just like I did the day he was born. In all my life, I only knew one thing that my little brother didn't like. He hated goodbyes. If he had to say goodbye to anyone, he would cry and he would hold you and he would say, "Don't go." But now I'm the one crying, but I never got to say goodbye. I will always love Timothy like I always have, and it kills me to think about, but I know he loved even his abuser and killer up until the very end, because unlike me, that's all he was capable of, love. I, on the contrary, want to stand here and express the anger and hatred that I feel, but if I'm honest, all that's just a mask, a bandage I try to put over the hole in my heart that was reserved for Timothy, but is now just filled with pain and remorse for every hug, high five, and I loved you that I might have missed in the time that I had with my sweet baby brother.
Felt like I know I needed to breathe. I didn't know if anyone else needed to breathe. Um, uh, wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow. Um, what he's talking about is how a lot of people feel later on, and there can be so much regret. There can be so much just, "I wish it was me," or "I wish I could have been there. I wish I had known." And that's where practicing mindfulness, practicing I can't change the past. Nobody can change the past. Um, uh, S.L. Conley, I don't think people still blame him, and he's the one that sent Timothy to be with her. I can imagine I can't. I can't imagine ever being in his shoes, and, I don't think he could. I wonder if the stepmother's there, because the father's girlfriend, wife, I don't know, but the stepmother did attend the trial, and, I don't think he can bring himself to be there, and also, if he did go, the news, I think, would bombard him with all the questions that we have. I mean, just let's be honest, we wanna ask him, when was the last time you talked to him? Like, was there any s I think people would have questions for him, and so I honestly think he just can't. Yes, he was living in another state, and, he thought that Shonda was gonna be more equipped to be able to handle him and, to care for him. Um, I think the fact that he wasn't in school, so Timothy was not in school, he was not on his prescribed medications, he didn't receive any medical, I don't think, probably no dental care either, and, because and a lot of people say, I don't know this for sure, because the family records are sealed. There are a lot of allegations that Shonda was never supposed to have custody of him, and legally she was unable to get custody. So we're gonna keep going with Nolan's testimony.
So now I turn to the justice system in hopes that in addition to serving the maximum penalty, that there will be no appeals or second chances. If I can't have my brother back, she shouldn't have her freedom back. And lastly, I want everyone to know that to those who knew him, even that wouldn't feel like justice. Because the life of one sweet little blue-eyed boy is not equivalent to that of a murderer. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. That's right.
Thank you, Judge. I want to preface this by saying that those of us involved in the justice system, including the defendant, know what sentence the court is going to impose here, at least for that first-degree murder charge. And it is a sentence which is as warranted in this case as ever there was a case. That life without parole is the only sentence that Ms. Vander Ark should receive. I wanted to stand here for two reasons. I wanted to stand here, up here at this podium, next to Millie and next to Nolan as they gave their statements for two reasons. One, to show that we support them, that we support whatever statement they wanted to make here today.
Uh-oh. That's something on my end. Sorry about that pause. Hopefully that comes back quickly. Am I still live?
That still doesn't even scratch the surface
I mean,
of what this woman did. I don't know, frankly, what number to suggest to the court. For years, I practiced in front of Judge Hicks. I know that Your Honor did as well. And Judge Hicks would frequently throw out numbers when he was discussing the discretion that the court has for life offenses, to throw out just numbers that just seem ridiculous. They don't seem ridiculous in a case like this. They just don't. Because nothing, again, can touch what this case was. Nothing will bring Timothy back. We all know that. We can't escape that tragedy. That the time for that has passed. But I would ask the court to send a message here that reflects how heinous, how callous, how cold, use whatever adjective you want to describe these actions. That even for that first-degree child abuse case, that's what this sentence should reflect. And those guidelines just don't even come close. So I leave it in the court's discretion here. And again, knowing that despite what decision it makes on that charge, it has no discretion with the life without parole sentence. And the only solace I take away from this, and I hope all the relatives and all the loved ones and all the people that cared about Timothy know that the only thing we can do at this point, and the only thing this court should do at this point, is to make sure that Ms. Vander Ark never sees a day of freedom again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Okay. So now the defense attorney is just going to do his job. Okay. So for the chat, the defense attorney, okay, he's just going to do his job. All right. So let's get ready for it.
Mr. Johnson, any allocution on behalf of your client prior to sentencing?
Yes, Your Honor, if I may. Very few people, I think, in this courtroom have the experience of going into a jail to meet your client for the first time. I know Your Honor has. And it's a strange feeling to go in there, because usually when we go in there, Judge, we've read a police report. And in some of those cases, it describes something just horrible. It's just the terrible things that happen.
This was
We go
horrible.
into those jail cells and we see this client, and we're looking because we're expecting to see horns in the tail and the pitchfork. That's what is being described. And we get in there and we see just a person who is now facing jeopardy due to the worst thing that she's ever done in her life. And whatever else has made this person that way is not in the guideline scores. In my client's case, Judge, as you've read the pre-sentence and the people have read it and it's been admitted, her father, her biological.
Do we care? So this should be about Timothy. If you want to go back to court TV and hear the rest of what he says, please go back to court TV. I can't. I just and he's doing his job. This is no hate towards him, okay? This is just I wanted to make today about Timothy. That's who it should be about. This should not be about her, any of her pain. Her time for getting help and support was before she did any of the crimes, okay?
Do you wish to say anything prior to sentencing? Well, first and foremost, for the individuals here to speak on Timothy's behalf, I appreciate you being here. It kind of struck me throughout the trial.
S.L. Conley, you know I can't take that. You know I can't take that. So I'm not laughing because like I have a dark sense of humor, and sometimes we laugh to keep from crying. And because the only time she seemed like happy and proud was when she was talking about her law degree. She's probably gonna go to jail and become like a jail attorney. Like I just can't. I just can't. That does not surprise me at all. That does not surprise me at all. Timothy was phenomenal, I believe, and even and he did not deserve anything that any of the that he deserved none of that. Absolutely none of that. Let's go ahead and listen to the judge.
You know, who was here for Timothy. And at one point in time, I worried that we may not have anyone to give a victim impact statement. And that to me made me very sad, quite frankly. Horrified more than anything, but quite sad. And I'm happy that two individuals took time to be here from miles across the country. And out of the horrible situation, that makes me feel a little bit better. Not much, but a little bit better. You know, Mr. Johnson makes the same argument today that he made at the trial, that this was just negligence. This was her not understanding what was going on. She was really trying to do the punishment. She was trying to be a good parent, and she just didn't realize that Timothy was in such a horrible condition. And I found myself, especially during closing argument, quite frankly, finding myself almost believing that. And afterwards, after the trial, I sat in my car after leaving that day trying to understand, why I could feel that way. And what I realized is that I wanted to feel that way because I didn't want to accept the reality of the situation here.
Exactly.
And the reality of the situation here is that this person, Ms. Vander Ark, you intentionally engaged in these acts. This wasn't negligence. This is not understanding why, but you intentionally did this with a goal. And I think Mr. Johnson's correct. I don't believe there was an intent to kill here because you would have lost the very thing that you wanted to torture.
Exactly.
Without him, you have no one to torture except maybe the younger children. So I don't believe you intended to kill him. I think you intended to continue on torturing him for as long as you possibly could. The why, I don't know. But all the information that I have in front of me, and I sat down, I really thought about this, and I looked over my notes from the trial, demonstrate that this wasn't negligence. This wasn't you not understanding. I read through every single text message of the exhibit, 2,000 plus pages to try to understand what the heck was going through your mind. And what became entirely clear to me is that you knew exactly what you were doing. Immediately afterwards, when police arrive at the home, you immediately concoct this lie about he's been on a hunger strike. He was in the bed and I checked on him and I gave him some food and all this stuff.
No,
You
she
got Paul involved in it. At one point in time, you're put baggy clothes on him. Put clothes on him to make sure, I guess that he looks like he was actually wearing them, that he was hiding his poor condition, even though you already received text messages, weeks earlier of how bad he looked. You testified yourself how highly intelligent you were. In fact, that's the only thing that you testified to that I think was actually true. You were quite proud of that, boasting how intelligent you were.
Exactly.
And not only that, but your actions in hiding this child. You hid him from his grandparents. You made sure that your other son, G, or little man, as you call him, didn't see him. Those text messages talk about not wanting anyone to see him. I want to see him in that condition. You made sure that the garage was closed. When you sent him out, there was no pants on to clean out the garage. I don't want to believe it because I don't understand. I can't wrap my mind. I've been trying now for this entire case to wrap my mind around about how somebody could do something so horrific, not only to another human being.
To their own child. Okay. I love this judge. I love this judge. So I hadn't heard this part yet. I don't want to blame it that she lacked emotional intelligence. To me, I think she had some, in my opinion, there was some sadistic like nature where I think she enjoyed causing him pain. So some people, when I'm in pain, so like let's say I'm having a lot of trouble at work, and if I'm in pain, I do my best to not take that out on my husband. I do my best to not take that out on my child, because the fact that I'm in pain, that is for me to manage. That is not for and anybody else in my family. She understandably was coping with the loss of her. Like her husband had a stroke and had to go live with his family, and she. I don't know if she blamed Timothy. Like I don't know, but for whatever reason, she turned all of her anger, hate, she turned it on her child. And no matter what's going on in my life, and so that's where I would have been in my own therapy, okay? So if I was feeling that upset, that I was feeling the urge to take it out on my child, best believe I would be I would have therapy every day. Like I would go commit myself somewhere, no. And then somebody made a great comment. I wanted to highlight it that her attorney, he actually talked about this being one of the worst cases that he's ever had to defend, and that this was a very difficult case. He didn't say those weren't the words he used, but he did a court TV interview just talking about this was an incredibly difficult defendant to like, it's just, ugh, ugh. It is this is and because I don't want people to minimize, like, "Oh, she knew. She knew exactly what she was doing." Because even in her testimony, when she was talking about Timothy, there was still that hate, in my opinion, there was still this hate and anger in her voice, but when she talked about G, there was this, like, love. But when she talked about Timothy, for some reason, there was this I didn't like it. I personally didn't like it. Let's keep going.
But to their own child. I'm a father myself. I love my kids. I love them with unconditionally. But quite frankly, there's a mother's love that I've seen that is striking. And anybody who's a parent who's married, most mothers, and not all, but most mothers have such a strong love for their children. And to see what you did to your own child. I don't know if there's a word in the English language to describe how to describe it. I only can come up with just horrific.
Uh-oh.
You intentionally and systematically tortured this child. And let's call it what it is. It's torture. You tortured this child. This wasn't punishment. This wasn't trying to curb his behavior. You tortured him. You monitored him obsessively. You all the things you did. I looked through every one of the messages: bread with hot sauce, wall sits, up and down the stairs, sleep deprivation.
And the hot sauce she used, like, there's a warning label on that hot sauce that they read in court. Like, I think the hot sauce is pretty much like, "This will cause unbearable." I think it says it'll cause regret or something. Like, "This hot sauce is gonna cause incredible pain." And she tried to say, "Oh, he liked hot stuff." But wait a minute, you were doing that as a punishment, so why would you give what? Like, it just her whole thing didn't make any sense. I truly think that she thought she was so intelligent and she was so bright and that she was going to get that jury on her side. I truly think she thought she was going to be able to convince the jury that she should be found not guilty, and the jury did not go for that at all.
Deprivation, ice baths, making him puke up food, monitoring his bathroom time, giving him 60 seconds in the bathroom if he went to urinated, or 5 minutes if he had a bowel movement. You made him sleep in the closet. You threatened us to make him sleep in the garage. You put Tabasco directly in his mouth. You made
Okay, so I'm interrupting some of what the judge is saying. So this is a great question. Was she ever attached to him? So I didn't get to do a psychological evaluation. I did do a video on Murdaugh and on narcissist and a narcissist love. Okay. And a narcissist love is through their lens and it's how you reflect back on them. I'm not saying she's a narcissist. I'm not saying he's a narcissist. I'm just saying that in situations where somebody has narcissistic traits, their love is often based on them. It's not based on the other person. It's not based on what it's how do you make me look? How does this reflect back on me? I don't know if she viewed him as like a failure. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense why any person would turn on a child that way. Okay? It doesn't make any sense why she would do that. And Phoenix, I agree. That this case, it's a lot like the Jody Ruby Ferreter. And I am following Tracy Ferreter's case. And if there's any mental health stuff, or because I think the attorney might, I don't know if they're going to take a different route because and I have videos on Timothy Ferreter on my court playlist. That was the father in the Boy in the Box case. If you haven't checked that out. Dominique, welcome, welcome. We haven't got to the sentencing yet. We're almost there. All right. And I've also seen, I do want to say this. I've also seen, I don't know if she maybe had animosity towards Timothy's father for him not being able to manage him or control him, because I think Paul came to live with her, I think after he so I don't know this for sure. It's my understanding that at some point Paul came to live with her. It sounds like it was after he was 18 because I believe she lost custody of all the kids. And I believe Paul like reconnected with her and then Timothy came. And so I just I just can't with her. But, when we talk about attachment, when we talk about love, my question is, if there are any personality things under that, then it can be incredibly fragile, and I do think she projected her own pain onto him, and I don't think there was any way for him to escape. I don't think there was any way for him to escape it. Similar to the Farrader case where the boy could do no wrong. RF in that case could do no right. Like he could not do anything right. And it got to a point where he just stopped trying and learned helplessness is real. So learned helplessness it's a really horrible study, but, like, they did it. They, put dogs in a box, and what would happen is one side would have a shock. I'm trying to put my hands. One side would have a shock, and the other side wouldn't have a shock. So the dogs could jump over to escape the shock. But eventually what they did is they put a shock on both sides for a period of time, and then they went back to the dog could jump to avoid the shock. But once the child was unable, sorry, once the not the child, but that's what we're talking about. Once the dog was unable to escape the punishment, they would just lay down and they wouldn't even try. But if they had jumped to the other side was safe. But it was already they had already been trained that there was no escaping it. And so we call that learned helplessness. I've done some content on that as well. Oh, wow. Let's keep going.
He put his hands over the head. Made him work in the garage with no pants. And there's two other things that didn't come out in the trial that were in the messages. One, that there was talk of blindfolding him, depriving him of his physical sight as a punishment. And the last thing that struck
And you wouldn't do that. So sensory deprivation to somebody with autism, because she described him as being hyposensitive, which I don't even know if I can't believe I don't know if that was true. But she described him as being undersensitive. Why would you do that? That's so weird. That is weird.
struck me is
I don't know if she researched torture. Like she might have researched because that sounds like something you would do in like a war situation. You've captured somebody from the other side. That they do sensory deprivation in that type of setting. Wow.
is just absolutely horrific in terms of your thinking. There was mentioning of giving him salt water as a punishment. One of the text messages talks about, hey, tell Paul or tell Tim that I'm not going to do the salt water punishment. And your reasoning for not punishing him not was that, oh my God, we can't get him salt water, that could hurt him, that could kill him. But it was because you didn't want to give him another excuse to sit down on the toilet because he'd have diarrhea. He'd have diarrhea, and so he would have an excuse to sit down for a few more minutes while he was diarrhea from salt water. That was your excuse.
And they timed him on the toilet, which was weird. That was really weird.
That was your justification, not that it would hurt him. And you did so for what? Because of some punishment. You wanted to regulate his food, even though you yourself testified that he didn't really gain a lot of weight. Toward the end of these text messages, you and Paul are talking about not wanting him to win. He's not going to win. I didn't allow pictures to be shown in open court of Timothy as he was when he died, because I didn't want people to remember him like that. Of all the things you took away from him, one thing I didn't want you to take away from him was at least some shred of dignity. And then I also thought, well, I'm a judge, I'm a human being. I don't know how to I don't know how to write this wrong. We try to do that. I try to do that from the bench every day. There's no way to write this wrong, except impose a sentence that essentially takes away your freedom. And I thought to myself, what do I do? And I will tell you this, I'm choosing not to remember your son
Oh, oh.
dead, looking like a Holocaust victim, but I'm choosing.
I wish I could zoom in, and I don't think I can. There had been 0 pictures of Timothy shown. 0 pictures. So I breathe. That's how I regulate, because watching this can be very, very triggering. So please breathe. Please, if it gets to be too much, please hop off. I try to interrupt it at times to break some of the buildup. Ah, oh, oh, wow. That one, that one got me. Oh, thank you, Judge. Wow. Wow.
Choosing to remember like that. And you can't even look at him. That's how he was. A beautiful child with a lot of life in his eyes. That's who your son was. And you took that from him. I'm choosing to remember him as a happy individual with life, not as an individual. And that's the picture I want people to remember of your son. You took that from him. You took it from him. For what reason, I
Zoom
don't
in on
know.
the
Mr.
picture.
Johnson's right. There is something broken in you. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't negate what you did here. So besides remembering him like that, I'm not going to let you hide in the darkness anymore. People know what you are now. They know what you did. You're not able to hide in the darkness anymore. Timothy won. And he won because we know what you did to him now. It's not hidden anymore. We know who you are. That's the way that I'm going to honor him. You don't win because justice, thank God, in this case prevailed. I can't even imagine if you had been able to resuscitate him. He'd be still suffering.
Wait a minute.
So if there's any
Shanda, you did not win. And it's really, she recorded everything. She recorded everything on the cameras. They used her own evidence against her. She's the one texting, giving Paul directions. She did that. That boy. Oh. So I have a 6-year-old, and as a mom, so not even as a psychologist, as a mom, it is hard. Now, I have worked with people, and that is the hardest thing for me as a therapist when I'm working with, in particular, a mother. When I'm working with a mother who despises her child, like there is this hate and animosity towards that child. I really dig to, and I find empathy. I meet with them one on one. I sometimes recommend that I do therapy with them instead of working with the child, because there's something going on where they have lost their love for their child, and their child will not get better if they're verbally talking to them, if they continue to not show love to their child. There's I can't do enough therapy for a 9, 10, 11, 15, 16-year-old whose mother despises, like, or whose parent, not even mother, whose parent despises them. But I will tell you, one of my trigger points is mothers, because I have a phenomenal relationship with my mom. Our relationship isn't perfect. It is not perfect at all. We set boundaries with one another, and she's always given me a voice. That was one thing my mother never did. She never ever took my voice, and she did that because of her own journey. She wanted to make sure that I always knew that her love was unconditional. I had consequences, but there was nothing I could do that would cause her to not love me, and I knew that. I know that now. And, now she wouldn't now, like, if I did something wrong, she wouldn't bail me out of jail. Like, she wouldn't, like, if I was wrong, she so that's where those boundaries become incredibly important. Um do you think she looked back at photographs, et cetera? So I don't know. I think she tried to give the reaction that she thought people wanted to see when they saw the picture of him looking emaciated, because I think Paul sent the text and said something to the effect of like how like something's going on. SL Conley, I want to dig into this a little bit deeper because something that I've seen is when a parent has a difficult relationship with their co-parent, sometimes they can take, or if there was a history, because I have worked with people that were in unsafe relationships with the co-parent. So they fled harm from the co-parent. The child was possibly exposed to DV, and the child is now having trouble appropriately managing their anger, and we're having to teach them those skills. I've sometimes had some parents that we've had to take a step back, and we've had to talk about their own trauma, or like we've had to address some deeper things. I'm a clinical psychologist, so my goal is always treatment. I'm not forensic, so I'm glad, like I don't have to now. If Shonda had come to me before it got to this point, I don't think she thought she was doing anything wrong. I don't think she thought she'd ever get caught. That's where I think there's some of that narcissist, I don't, but that's where, because somebody asked me in the comments, they were like, um, "What's my experience working with narcissists?" And I was like, "They don't." In individual therapy, like, in my experience. Now, this isn't true for everyone, because there is, I think he's on YouTube. There is a very popular guy. He talks about his recovery with narcissism, and he talks about his treatment. That is rare. Normally, when I am normally I'm working with the child of a parent with narcissistic traits, or I'm working with the partner of somebody with narcissistic traits. Like, I think it was over on TikTok. There was a joke that like a lot of people are in therapy because of the people that won't go to therapy. Like that's the dynamic that I see more of. Um, I think he might be. Is he in Florida now? Is he still in Oklahoma? I don't know. I thought somebody might have said. I don't know. I don't know. So this is what she said. Okay, but that doesn't, to me, that doesn't help explain why she would take it out on her child. So I think she might have, I don't know if she viewed him as weak. I don't know if there was this animosity and just I don't know what happened, or if she was being good for the husband, and then once the husband wasn't in the picture, she then could let that other side out. Those are my thoughts. So my opinion, Dr. Barry's opinion is, which is just based on my conjecture, like, I don't know. My opinion is that once her partner was no longer in the home, there was nobody to hold her back. And I think she thought she could make Paul go down for it. Like, if they ever got caught, well, because I think she did that. She tried to blame Paul, and to me, Paul came across as not being as, like, uh, cognitively, uh, just intelligence-wise. Now he's probably smart in his own ways, but a lot of people were like, is Paul autistic, or, like, what's going on with Paul? Because even the jury was like, Paul, because something seemed a little off with Paul, and, I don't know if that'll come up in his sentencing as well. Um it could have been embarrassment, but honestly, I think it was opportunity. I'm just being honest. Like, sometimes we try to make things too clinical, and we try to make it too, like, I think there was no one that was gonna stop her. Ugh, those are my thoughts. All right. Let's keep going. Go ahead.
Thing I'm grateful for would be that he finally passed away, so you couldn't continue to torture him. Like you did. It's a sentence of the court. First as to count 2, child abuse in the first degree. Court sentences you 50 years to 100 years in prison. Credit for 575 days. Court is exceeding guidelines in this case. The court finds that
I also think that she might intellectualize her emotions because the way that she's focusing on writing and all of that right now versus just sitting and hearing her sentence. I do think she'll probably appeal it. I just she'll have nothing but time. She probably will appeal it. I don't know that there will be anything to actually appeal. I don't know. Like I don't know that she would win a new trial or anything like that.
amount of torture that I've indicated in terms of the long-term suffering that Mr. Ferguson, Timothy went through, justifies on a reasonable grounds to depart from the guidelines. The used to be the standard was the guidelines. If the guidelines had taken into consideration all the elements, I don't think they would take into consideration the amount of absolute systematic, consistent torture that you engaged in here. I think that's enough reasons to justify departing from the guidelines. There's a $68 state cost, $130 crime victim rights assessment. As to count 1, felony murder, it's a sentence of the court. You serve a term within the Michigan Department of Corrections for the rest of your natural life without parole. Again, there's credit for 575 days that you've already served. There's a $68 state cost. The crime victim assessment fee has already been assessed. The court is going to assess a $450 public defender fee. Ms. Vander Ark, you have a right to file an application. Excuse me, you have a right to file an appeal. Request for this, if you are unable to afford an attorney, one will be appointed to a public expense. Request for assistance to a lawyer must be made within 42 days from today's date. Clerk is handing you a form that you must complete. Return to court in that 42 days. Mr. Roberts.
Judge, just
The
briefly, I
ju-
believe you did indicate you would order that $5,000 in restitution.
Oh, I did. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. The court will order $5,000 in restitution at this time to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services with the caveat that Mr. Johnson, you can certainly, if after the documentation, you can certainly ask for a restitution hearing and to contest that amount.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else for the record, Mr. Roberts?
No, thank you, Judge.
Mr. Johnson?
Wow, wow, wow. 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 So, wow. Um okay, so is this Paul? Did Paul get kicked out? Okay. Everything's recorded. I don't think there's any way for her to not be found guilty. I don't know that she would testify again, but I don't know that she saw that she did anything wrong. Like I think she lacks insight into her own behavior, into how she comes across. She spoke more positively about her dogs than she did her own child. Her dogs. She would have never done. And she like the prosecutor at you she would have never done what she did to her half of what none of what she did to her dogs, and yet she did that to her child, so, mm. Um, say no to what? So help me understand, say no to what? And I don't know if she's a narcissist, I'm just saying. Um Oh, I have not seen the body cam footage, and that sounds like secondary trauma. I am not gonna do that. So this is for the restitution is for Timothy's burial. So the state paid for him to be cremated, and I think possibly the victim fund. So I think if anybody received therapy through the victim fund because of her crimes. So I do believe it was for Timothy's burial. I she was probably kind to the dogs. She and also sometimes so that's the thing with animals. So animals, if you feed like animals are but I think she was actually kind to the dogs. So wow. Wow. Wow, y'all. Thank y'all to 158 of you all for joining me. If you like the psychological perspective of legal and entertainment news, that is what I do here. I appreciate you all so much. I'm going to go back to edit my video for 8 p.m. I have a video coming out tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. Um, I appreciate y'all's engagement. Paul is going to be sentenced in February. So I think it's February 26th, and I will probably cover that one as well. I do think he should get jail time. I know people have thoughts on that. He did do the thing. And I do believe in consequences for people's actions, even if it was his mom that was telling him to do all those things. He's an adult. He's an adult, and I do think that he should have some jail time. I don't know if the judge will do like 20 to 25 years. It was probably he seemed like testifying in front of his mom, and he was the one that called her Shanda. I don't know if they always called her Shanda. I don't know if they ever called her mom, but each and every child called her Shanda. And so I don't know what their relationships were like before. And I just can't thank y'all enough. Y'all support and engagement. It means so much. And let's see. I'm gonna run my outro. I have a new little outro because normally I just say bye. I just disappear and, and it's kind of awkward. So we're going to make it a little less awkward. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.